Hello and welcome back to the first Molby on the Spot of the new season. I'm Trev Downey here in my field in beautiful rural Ireland and joined, of course, by the legend that is Mr. Jan Molby. Welcome back, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, Trevor. We're ready to go again, I feel, although there's still a bit of work to be done, I think, but we're as ready as we're going to be.
Yeah, lots to talk about, and it'll be interesting for people to hear your take on topics that have been in some ways talked to death and in other ways still have a lot to say about them because there is news breaking all the time. Before we get into any specific stories, the overall feeling, it's a bit weird, isn't it? And you and I were just talking before the mics went live, and you can say whatever you want to say in regards to that, but just it is a bit strange, isn't it, considering how gung-ho we were at the start, how ridiculously fast out of the blocks we were and doing incredible business right down to the Ekitike deal, which was like quite decisive in and of itself, getting a lad who we believe at least was sort of sitting by the phone waiting for us, Jan, to make that call and preferring Liverpool to all other comers, as was the wonderful talent that is Florian Wirtz. It's really exciting to have these deals under our belts, along with the two fullbacks who look great, exciting, full of potential. That window was on course to be the greatest ever. It still may be. Maybe it will be regardless of what happens. But it feels as if, like you just hinted at, it's unfinished. And it's really weird that we may end the window, if it doesn't pan out the right way, with a feeling that it didn't go well, which is kind of crazy.
I think what happened, Trevor, because we made some excellent signings early on without playing games. So you kind of just think, well, what an exciting squad we got. And then the games come and then you start to look and you go, whoa, hold on. You know, we're a little bit light here. As always happens in pre-season, one or two people pick up injuries. Unfortunately, the people who are picking up injuries in pre-seasons are the people who more or less always pick up injuries. So they go in that category of being injury prone. That puts you on even more pressure. But I do think that where we're at right now, we're in a situation where Arne Slot feels he can start the season. He's ready to go. One or two problems he feels he can cope with within the squad, i.e. centre half. I think he feels that Endo or even Gravenberch might be able to play there should we need it. And I do believe we will make more signings before the window closes. It's now tactical, isn't it? What happens between now and the end of the season very much smells of being tactical, even to the extent of, you know, trying to sell Harvey Elliott, where I think we feel there's an opportunity to get really good money for Harvey. And so we're going to play a bit of hardball on that. And also in terms of the players that are coming in, you know, I think the two will be being linked with Isak and Mark Gay down at Crystal Palace. I think we probably feel that both clubs are overvaluing both of them a little bit at the moment. So we're just going to play. I think we're going to play a little bit of a cool game until, you know, a channel of conversation opens up again.
Yeah, and I think that's where people struggle, is with the whole patience aspect of it. It's because it's easy to say, don't worry, it'll get done. But there's a reality to the way things are at the moment that I wouldn't mind discussing with you in a bigger, wider perspective. If we just have a look here at the team squad, just the first team squad, and it looks a little bit thin, perhaps. Now, if there's one area where we're really well off, Jan, it's right here in the goalkeeping department. That's where things are very good indeed, and that's where it looks very healthy. But after that, it starts to be a little bit less so. So we've got Ali. It was great to see him play. We've got Mamardashvili, who you know, had a mixture of moments in pre-season, one or two fantastic saves, one or two kind of dodgy moments. This highly rated Armin Pesci has come in, and we've got this reliable sort of journeyman in Freddie Woodman. Now, however, we get to the defence, and straight away out the gap, the point you made about this lad here, without mentioning his name, is well taken. I think maybe this injury may have decided an awful lot of people on whether or not Joe Gomez is someone that we can rely on going forward in any way, shape, or form. So that's a worry. Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, we worry, don't we, that they might be possibly lads who could pick up the injuries for long term. We've got Milos Kerkez, who's come in, and it looks like he's going to be first choice. Connor Bradley, who's already injured and has been injured. I think someone broke down the sums for 48 games and played and been available for 52 games of his professional career so far. We've got Kostas Tsimikas, who it wasn't in the squad at the weekend, and Ali Robbo, who's very much in the veteran category now. Jeremy Frimpong, who's come in, look exciting. Reece Williams and Calvin Ramsey, both of whom look like they're on their way out. In midfield, we've got Wataru Endo, who the manager doesn't really seem to fancy much. We've got Dom and Alex McAllister. We've got Curtis Jones. Harvey Elliott looks like he's on his way out. Ryan Gravenberg won't be available for the first game of the season due to suspension. Trev Downey looks exciting, but you're not going to build your team around him at that age. And Stefan Bajcetic is another one who looks like he's going to be leaving. And then finally, you've got Florian Wirtz, who's come in up in the attacking side of things, alongside Salah, Chiesa, who we had linked with a move away, Cody Gakpo, Hugo Ekitike, and Ben Doak, who's also been linked with a move away. But it's starting to look a bit light there, Jan. The Sun's on it recently and said that we may only have 18 senior players currently, unless we add to them. And the reality is we're looking to add to them. We're going to get to those stories in a minute. But what do you make of that squad as is? As is, it's ironically, because we have sold well and we look to be about to sell even more, it is just on that light side, isn't it, in several areas?
I feel very much so. And as I said before, it was once we started to play games, and you have a starting 11 and you look what's available on the bench, and you always have to assume that on most match days, you're going to have at least 2 or 3 players unavailable through injuries. So it was a worry. It's almost like, do they know something that we don't know in terms of the youngsters that they might be prepared to involve? Young players, their time more often than not is pre-season, yeah? And we tend to get excited about young players pre-season because it doesn't really matter. And you can chuck them in and you see them, whatever. But as exciting as they are, I just don't see any of them being ready to be involved for real. Some of them due to maybe even lack of ability or due to physicality, others due to age, I mean, if we want to be, which is our aim, isn't it, to be the best team in Europe, and Gamoa 16, it's a little bit early, isn't it? So, yeah, we look light. We could possibly sign another 4, couldn't we, before the window closes? Isak and a centre half, maybe even 2 centre halves. I mean, I would probably think we'd sign 2 centre halves, but I'd also like another midfield player if Harvey Elliott is going and Leoni is maybe it's a bit too early for a mission. So yeah, there's still work to be done. As much as we 4, 5, 6 weeks ago thought, well, this is a great window, isn't it? We're going places here. How are the rest going to cope? But it quickly becomes it's like a real again, isn't it? Because you start to play games and then you realise, okay, well, the opposition turn up and they're also very good, i.e. what we've seen at Wembley on Sunday. Palace can play, can't they? Well organised, got good players, they give you a game. And then you look and you think, oh, well, this is not going to be as straightforward as we think, which on one hand is great, isn't it? But yeah, there's still work to be done. The surprising bit is that we cruised to the title last year and we've decided to do all this. I think we've got to be careful we don't do too much.
Well, that's where I was going to go just before we get into specifics. Your man has been around an awful lot of high quality squads and seen them overhauled. Probably the most famous one for Liverpool fans will be the 87-88 campaign, where there was 4 sort of very prominent additions, which made a big difference to the league win that year. It should have been a double, as you will remember only too well. But that was 4 players. This is going to be more, and it's not just the incomings. It's not like we've gone out and done like a Chelsea or an AC Milan back in the day and just scooped up all the good lads and added them to our existing squad. There has been a huge amount of outgoings. We had the spectacularly tragic loss of Diogo Jota, which you just can't legislate for. But in reality, there's probably a world where Diogo might have been one of the ones who would have been leaving anyway. Darwin Núñez is literally just out the door, following the footsteps of Luis Diaz. These are big, big exits. Kwanzaa is one who was there or thereabouts in the first team squad, and he's also out the gap. And we know we're going to probably add the likes of Harvey Elliott and some others to it before this is all over. So the turnover is quite spectacular, both in ins and in outs. I'm not asking you to make any predictions, but having been around professional squads, that kind of a shake-up, I guess there would be good and bad sides to it, wouldn't there, in terms of the dynamic and the camaraderie between the crew?
Yeah, and I'm even surprised you haven't mentioned the fullbacks. I know that Robertson is still at the club, but his game time is going to be limited, isn't it? And Trent's gone. And this is the one big argument I've had with my friends during the summer. My argument is that you don't just replace Trent and Robbo. You know, as good as these new kids might be, but Trent and Robbo brought so much more than just being good footballers, isn't it? So that in itself is going to be a challenge, isn't it? Yeah, in terms of the whole sort of atmosphere and mood in the camp, it can have an impact. Obviously, the shots are saying very, very tragic, and you felt that, and of course it would have. It hurts everybody, didn't it, Trevor? But obviously some players were closer to it than others. But I also felt that there was things going, you know, one or two players looked and went, well, we didn't quite see that one going. Because when you as a player are in a squad and the club sells somebody, you don't mind going. It's that kind of, yeah. But, you know, sometimes the club do sell somebody, you go, you know, and I just feel that I think a lot of players, and I'm talking about experienced players, because young players are not in a position to just these things because they don't know what it takes. But I think some of the players, we heard Virgil van Dijk talk after the weekend, that I hope that the club still bring in players. And I think Virgil would have probably looked at that and gone, what we're getting rid of here now is a proven Premier League player who is inconsistent, but he never lets you down in terms of work rate. His numbers were good last year. And I think Virgil knows that they're big numbers that's walking out the door, you know. So, yeah, I think there's some kind of frustration. And also because it hasn't quite clicked, has it? We've seen signs from all our new players. And I don't think anyone's in doubt that all our new players are really, really good players. But you also feel with the Premier League, you need to be right, don't you, from the word go. You need to be bang on. You can't find your feet and find your way into the Premier League, and after 6 games you've lost 1 and drawn 2. You know, you're almost out of the race, isn't it? So you're also under that kind of pressure. So yeah, the next couple of weeks are big in terms of making sure we get the wins. But there's a couple of beasts of games in it. You know, having to go to Newcastle and then play Arsenal at Anfield before the window closes. So the pressure's on.
The pressure is on from minute one. And there's a lovely kind of irony in the fact that last season, when we did kind of walk away with the league effectively, the thing that was there was that solidity and that uniformity in the squad. It was the same squad from the year before. You added in Chiesa, who didn't play, and that was it. So we had a fellow working with someone else's squad, and he did so to great effect. Now he is refashioning the squad in his own image, and it's so very different. But like you said, some very exciting signs.
Do you think, Trevor, that there's something to be said for a Jurgen Klopp type player? And we're obviously having less and less of Jurgen Klopp's squad, aren't we? You know, more and more of them are moving on. Was there some steel and determination about the players that Klopp brought in and the way that he introduced them, the way that his demands were? You know, I just sometimes think that Klopp installed something in them, you know, that sometimes a slight lack of ability might cover. So I'm also a little bit worried about some of Klopp's sort of fringe players that we don't end up without too many of them, because they just, in my opinion, had a bit of steel about them, you know.
Yeah, the thing about Jurgen is lads would run through walls for him now, whereas maybe Arne doesn't inspire quite that same loyalty yet. I did see a really interesting interview with Ibu Kanate talking about how he had been showing them videos about how to approach different teams and what different teams were doing and what we should do to counter that. And there was a sort of amazement in his voice when, like, you know, looking back on a league-winning campaign, he goes, he was right, you know? So I think that probably stands very much in his favor. You know how judgmental a group of footballers is, especially those at the high level. You know, you've been part of groups watching managers walk in, watching new lads walk onto the training pitch and go, well, let's see what you're about. And it struck me as you were saying that there, you must have been having flashbacks to maybe the Graham Souness era, where you were talking about, you know, lads walking out the door who still had something to offer. There was quite a few in that time, wasn't there, where Graham thought they were maybe too much part of the Kenny era or past their sell-by date or whatever, and as a result ended up leaving the club. And you must have been thinking, watching some of those guys go, wow, is that wise? Or am I putting thoughts in your head there?
No, absolutely not, Trevor. I mean, it was not a thought we had at the time, but when I look back, I can maybe understand that squad that finished second in 1991 might not have been able to win the league because of, well, mainly because of what Manchester United all of a sudden produced from nowhere, you know, and then you had to compete with the level that they were at. So when you look back, I can probably go, well, okay, that squad might not have been able to win the league. But still, as they went through the door, you've gone, oh, I don't think that was wise. And I've told you this one before, haven't you? About Peter Basie when he went to Everton. I mean, like, we were up in arms, you know. First, we were blaming Peter for sneaking out through the back door, but he hadn't been told to go, isn't it? You know, so yeah, it does happen. And I just think that the experienced players who've been through it, who's been through seasons, 55, 60 games, knows exactly what it requires. And you would rather have a bunch of guys who've done it, you know, than the unknown.
Before we move on to the first kind of major story that we want to deal with on an isolated basis, loads and loads of love for you in the comments there, my friend. As you could well imagine, it's always nice to open it up and to hear what people have to say. Lots of love for Jan in the comments. Fair play, keep them coming in. And just to mention, Glyn mentions there that the 86 Cup final was the Molby final. He says, well, just so happens that we are going to do a little bit of a feature on that, Jan and I. We'd kind of planned to do it this show, but the way clock is ticking already, I think it may well be the next one. So we will be fitting that in over the next couple of shows. Keep your eyes out for that. It'll be 5-10 minute section at least. So the first story that I want to have a look at is the one that's dominating everyone's I think everyone's minds over the course of the window so far. And I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing. I'm starting to get a bit sick of it myself. But it is, of course, the Alexander Isak thing. And David Ornstein there was the one who broke the Isak story latest. I don't know if there's any great massive news in it, but it is a confirmation that he will not play for Newcastle again. Lots of talk about that. We'll come back to that aspect of it, the Downing tools aspect of it. Even if the window closes without exit, the 25-year-old views his NUFC career to be over, says Ornstein, and has no wish to reintegrate. The club say he's not for sale, but they are exploring the market amid Liverpool interest. Now, I don't know what market they're exploring, Jan, because there is only really one club who looks to be willing to pay the dirty, huge amount for the lad, and that's us. And there's also a couple of links that they have between Newcastle and other players, which I find almost pointless to talk about at the moment, because Newcastle, and this is one of the big problems here, their recruitment over the summer has been nothing short of tragic. I'd like to say it's been ineffective. I'd like to say they've been unlucky, but it's actually amateur night. I don't understand what's happening. Maybe you have some insight into that. Let's start though first with the idea of Isak, the player. Were he to come into the picture, I think we can both agree that the defense needs to be addressed. We can see comments in the comment thread already about that. You and I spoke about it before we even started here. We'll get there, folks. Don't worry about that. So we're not ignoring the defense at the moment. But were Isak to be added to the attacking options, do you think, Jan, that leaves us well balanced in that attack? Because there are all these stories that won't go away, linking us to the likes of Barcola. We previously were linked to Rodrigo. We have been linked to Malik Fofana. So I'm curious as to what is going on here. Do we have a plan A and a plan B that's quite different, do you think?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. I do think that we look at our wide attack as option, and we're thinking, you know, we might just be caught out a little bit here. But what the club is aware of is that this is a bit like, I'm not convinced that 8-10 months ago, our number one transfer target was Florian Wirtz. I'm not convinced that's the case. But I think it's something that fell our way. All of a sudden, a player that most people felt he's going to go to Manchester City. You know, you spoke to Pep, blah, blah, blah. You know, when it happens, Manchester City get you in a headlock, don't they? And you become a Manchester City player. But he kind of fell on our. So I think we kind of gone, well, this is a player. And I think that the people who do all the stats at Anfield would have gone, listen, this is a player we can't afford to miss out on. So we've gone for him. And then we'll deal with whatever, believing that he can play in a number of positions anyway. Alexander Isak almost falls into the same category of once in a lifetime. The thing with Alexander Isak is that if you want him, you know, it's got to be here now, hasn't it? And also 25 in September, which means he'll be 26, or is it even 26 in September, whatever. So you've got to be careful if you want to wait 12 months and you know how old he is, and it might not fit how we'd like to sign this. So no doubt he's a good player. I have to stress though, Trevor, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the way he's behaved. You know, I think he might have been able to do these things in a different way. Letting Newcastle know that he wants to go to Liverpool. I find it strange in a World Cup year that he's so keen on making such a big point about it all. He still has 3 years left on his contract. I wouldn't like to be Newcastle, but most of it is self-inflicted on what a nightmare they've had. They've got no CEO, they've got no director of football. They had a director of football that promised Alexander Isak a new contract, which they then thought wasn't a good idea. They got massive issues. They saw this coming with Ekiteke and Isak. They just couldn't stop it. They knew what was happening. They knew we were going to take Ekiteke off them. They knew we were going to come for Alexander and Isak. There's nothing they could do to stop it, apart from what they're doing now, which I don't know how long that's going to last. I just have this feeling, Trevor, that we play him on a Monday night bank holiday. I think it's the 25th of August. There's still a week left at the window. You know, is that the moment where they kind of go, well, Liverpool have now been to St James's Park. Alexander Isak wouldn't have to visit in the next 12 months. This is a time where Liverpool and Alexander Isak get their wish.
Yeah, I'm interested in your take on his behaviour, because a lot of people have been quick to point out that Liverpool as a club have been here before in terms of maybe the likes of Torres, maybe the likes of more recently Coutinho, Suarez, people like that, where Liverpool were seen as the penultimate step on someone's career. You know, it feels now as if Liverpool might be the destination club. The Florian Wirtz thing would seem to be a suggestion of that for a lot of clubs, for a lot of players, we might be the place to be, which is great. And it makes a massive difference to us going forward. But we have been here before. We have endured the fact that players want to be elsewhere. We'll all remember the back injury that Coutinho had and all the rest of it. Would you have any sympathy with Isak in terms of the fact that it is a very short career, and if he feels, now people have said maybe he's not being very well advised and all that kind of thing, but that if he feels that the only way he can get his move in his very finite career to get playing at the standard and the type of club that he wants to play at is to play this kind of hardball thing. Would you have sympathy with that? Do you think maybe there's, I mean, obviously Liverpool fans won't care, but it's interesting that you bring that up. What's your take on that?
I think it's very difficult to answer that, Trevor. Would I have any sympathy with him? You know, as I said before, I feel that he might have been able to deal with it in a different way. Obviously started off very deliberate, make sure the world knew he was training on his own, away from the city in Spain. And obviously now, since where Newcastle said, we're not going to sell you this window, he's come out and said, well, you know, I'll never wear the shirts again. I think that's maybe a little bit over the top. He could have done. It's, as far as I'm concerned, Trevor, it's not something that I would ever hold against somebody who joins Anfield. But right this moment in time, he is a Newcastle player. And if I was a Newcastle fan, I would be disappointed. But we did this, and I'm sure, Trevor, we've done a podcast where we spoke about Alexander Isak. And the general consensus about Alexander Isak from last year was that they won a trophy at Wembley and they qualified for the Champions League again. And people said, surely that'll be enough to keep him. And I have to say that, Trevor, I never thought that would be enough. Alexander Isak is viewed as one of the best number 9s in the world. He plays in the Premier League and the Champions League, but he has no chance of winning either. Yeah. And the great players want to compete. He wants to play in Champions League semi-finals, finals. They want to be in the top 1, 2, 3 in the Premier League. And that's how he sees himself. So winning the Carabao Cup and finishing 5th in qualifying was never, ever going to be enough. It was only a matter of if anyone was prepared to push the button and offer somewhere close to what he wanted. You know, they can't give him what he wants as a footballer. And it's also transpired that he can't give him what he deserves as he's standing as one of the best number 9s in the world. So it is a problem. I just wish he'd have turned up for training and joined in with the lads and gone. If I have to play the first game of the season against Aston Villa, then so be it. Also for him, it's a World Cup year, isn't it? Yeah, I just find it strange.
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate situation, which we will all forget about. Like you said, if he comes through the door, and other people can hang on to their grievances. Some of the loudest people, by the way, about this have been Arsenal fans, because of course, and completely ignoring the fact that Gyökeres did pretty much the same thing, unless I'm very much mistaken, this summer too. So look, that's all tribalism, and that can be whatever it is. But we have other little stories that I wouldn't mind looking at as well. And one of the big areas that we also want to add to the team is the defense. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting here. And we've seen a lot of people talk about who might our likely candidates be. And I just want to see what you make of this. I think this is it. Yeah. Let's have a look at this one, because there is a lot of stories going around today, and Ornstein again was involved in spreading this particular one around about young Leoni at Parma as being one that Liverpool are very, very interested in. There were a couple of lads. There was a Greek kid who was probably going to be a little bit more plug and play in terms of being first team ready. This guy has, I think, somewhere in the teens of first team appearances for Parma, hugely highly rated, and a big unit of a kid, and all the potential in the world. And obviously people have run the sums on him, and he's looking like being a very, very good candidate for us. But an awful lot of people are thinking, well, we do need someone who is, like I said before, plug and play, someone who is ready to jump into that first team now. So to that end, I kind of wonder, what do you make of that? Who is it? Mark Guéhi and Mark Guéhi only? Because that's the only story in town at the moment in terms of lads who are sort of good to go. The Mark Guéhi story won't go away. There's all sorts of numbers getting thrown around. It's clear that Liverpool don't want to pay what Palace want us to pay, but it's also clear that that deal is one that could be done where Liverpool to, I guess, give in or say yeah to whatever fee Palace put forward.
There's also a thought that Mark Guéhi quite prepared to see out his contract. He's quite prepared to hang around at Crystal Palace for another 12 months and then leave in 12 months on a free transfer, which is something that doesn't suit Liverpool. Plug and play, Trevor. When has that ever worked for us? I'm thinking on the top of my head. Go back. We took somebody else. Was it Ben Dave? To take somebody from Ben Davies from Preston. Did we sign Stephen Corker? I think the only one worked. I forgot his name now. Since I've come in and did quite well as sort of a plug and play. We signed him from somewhere in Germany. It's annoying me now. Like, come on, Trevor, help me out, will you?
Well, there is the glaring example of Virgil van Dijk, who is like
Klavan.
Ragnar Klavan as well. But
he came in and did well. What I'm saying is that I'd rather we signed this 18-year-old kid, because what I'm hearing, yes, I've not seen enough of in fact, I haven't seen him. But what I'm hearing about this kid is that he could easily cope with 15, 20 games. He's at that level, isn't it? So I'd rather we signed him and go for it. Instead of trying to find Mark Gay. He's interesting. He's a really, really good player. But what are we? I spoke to the Crystal Palace people at the cup final in May, and they said he has to go. He's got 12 months left of his contract. We cannot afford to let that type of money walk out the club. So I think that's the difference between trying to sign Isak or Gay, is that Palace are quite prepared to play ball. They know that, but it's 30 or 40 million, because I reckon he'll end up in that, around that 30, 40 million in the end, maybe 30 with a lot of add-ons. I don't know, but I do like him. But I also like the young kid, and only from what I've heard, it almost comes as one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Although I've never been a fan of signing defenders from Italy because of the way that the Italian league generally defends. It's not as deep as defensive as he used to be, but he looks a very exciting player.
Is there not an argument, though, with the fact that Kwanzaa has moved, that Ibou Konate is at best injury prone, and that Virgil's getting to the veteran stage of his career? Is there not an argument that we need at least two in this window before it closes? So, and if one of those is a kid, you think that's okay if we get someone who's first team ready and this prospect type? Because we have been looking at prospect types. Now, maybe someone like Huijsen has played more first team football than Leoni, but that's the type of, we looked at Lenny Yoro, unless I'm very much mistaken, the previous summer. So we're obviously looking at that type of up and comer, and someone like for a bit of succession planning. And of course, Jan as well, there is, apart altogether from his injury issues, there is the very real situation of Konate's contract not yet being sorted. So it does feel, doesn't it, like two need to come in before this window shuts. Yeah,
absolutely. That would be an ideal situation. Although I did say before that the manager might feel like Gravenberch or Endo can play there from time. Maybe even Robbo could play one or two games as a left side. The problem with him being left side centre half is that that's where Van Dijk plays, and you have to assume that Van Dijk has to play, because we look at a totally different team when he doesn't play. And in terms of Konate, Konate it was a strange season last year, wasn't it? Because first game of the season, he preferred two centre halves is Kwanzaa and Van Dijk. We all knew that Kwanzaa started the game at Ipswich. That changed within 45 minutes. And then Konate came with one hell of a comeback, isn't he? I mean, and he had a really great sort of 5 or 6 months. But since he's been injured and coming back again, all that sort of uncertainty in his players crept in a little bit. Sometimes he's over aggressive in his press. He sometimes loses runners in behind them, isn't it? So, yeah, I totally wouldn't be against signing two. Could we get those two you've just had up there, Gay and the young Italian kids? I'd be more than delighted.
Yeah, I think that would suit everybody in many ways. The other area of the field as well, where there's still talk, of course, is outgoings. And there is the talk, obviously, about Harvey Elliott. And there's a bit of Red Bull Leipzig chat there. There had previously been Premier League clubs being linked with him. First, it was West Ham. They wanted it was apparently a transfer. They were looking at Tyler Morton as well, but then it turned into they wanted loans. That didn't work out. Morton has since gone and got himself a decent move, I think, to Ligue 1. And now Harvey Elliott is absolutely on his way out. But still, there's no confirmation as to where that will be. You imagine that'll be a good fee. The other player who there's an awful lot of talk about at the moment is our Italian, Chiesa. And the reason I want to mention him is because we're talking about the squad and whether we have enough and all the rest of it. The chat was that Chiesa was likely to leave, but we've done so much business and we've had the unexpected loss of Diogo Jota as well, that you're looking at that squad now and you're thinking, do we need that guy? Do we need a lad who can come in and be a safe pair of hands? And this was going around Gazzetta Italia, being retweeted by them from this Italian journalist Carlo Laudisa, and it says, Liverpool complicates the plans of Inter and Napoli. Red light for Federico Chiesa. He is non-transferable for Slot, even if he doesn't play him. The Reds are on the hunt for Isak, blah, blah, blah. So the new chat, Jan, is that we need to keep this kid around because he addresses quite a number of issues in terms of being able to fit in to various attacking positions should we need him. My only issue with this, Jan, is a bit the same as it was with Endo. Do we think the manager has suddenly changed his opinion on this lad? Do people honestly think that Arne Slot has had a reconsideration of whether or not he would be someone he'd go to for a first 11? Because I doubt that's changed. Where do you stand on the keeping Chiesa around thing, especially given that whatever transfer money we get in for him will literally probably only cancel out whatever we paid in the first place?
It does appear a little bit like a waste of time, doesn't it, Trevor? The boy's been here for 12 months. We took a punch on him, but he was relatively cheap, obviously because of his injuries, and we thought we might be able to do. But even last year, at times where you thought this is his chance in it, he was never given it. And I don't know whether that's the right word or not, because people talk about the manager never gave him a chance. Well, the manager sees him every day in training. And if he doesn't feel he's up to scratch in training, he's not going to play him in games, is it? So I do find it strange that all of a sudden we feel that we might need to keep hold of him. Maybe that has something to do with and Gamora, who I mentioned before, and also Ben Doak, who they might just feel is Doak might not quite be up to it in terms of ability, and the other kid is maybe a little bit too young, isn't it? So we might have to hold on to him until we sign somebody else. And that somebody else might just be somebody again, Trevor. 19, 20, 21. You mentioned a boy from France, is a Fofana. It might be somebody like that we go and have a punt at.
Yeah, it feels very up in the air, which is kind of frustrating to be talking like this on a show like this, where we're looking forward so much to seeing all these new talents. Let's focus on the positives of where we are and what the business that has been done. We got a good look at Hugo Ekitike, I think in particular, at the weekend in the Community Shield. We could see what Florian Wirtz is going to be for the team. There was a weird thing that I wanted to ask you about in terms of the balance of the team, and I think it was actually a balance issue, in that the way we were currently configured, I think everyone thought it was a very exciting team, with our two new fullbacks in situ, our two strongest centre halves, Ali back, who nobody expected to start that game, a midfield which was the compromised area of the team in terms of first choice. We know Mac is working his way back to fitness, and he may not be right for the start of the season. Gravenberch can't start the first game, so there's going to be compromise in that area regardless. But the attack was quite interesting, and when you have Szoboszlai there, and you also have Florian Wirtz, and you have Mo Salah, and you have Hugo Ekitike, and Cody Gakpo was the veteran from the squad who managed to keep his place there as well. No real surprise given the outgoings that we've had. It looked a little bit as if whatever way the configuration of the team was to go through Wirtz, ironically ended up sort of freezing out Mo Salah a bit in a way that we were looking at previously and thinking, that's not good. We need to get that guy on the ball. But there was so much exciting stuff happening on the far flank that it kind of made up for it. What was your take on that and the way? Do you think that's a teething issue, Jan? Do you think that will work itself out?
Yeah, I briefly mentioned before, Trev, and obviously you've got to be careful what you say, isn't it? But, the fact that we signed Florian Wirtz because he was available, and now we've got to try and fit him into the team. And you don't just fit somebody like Wirtz into the team. He has to be the main guy. He's the conductor, isn't he? So I'm never convinced that great teams have so many players who need to be the main conductor. They have a very clear way of playing, and they go through, bang, bang, bang. This is what you do, isn't it? So I think that Florian Wirtz so far, I found it a little difficult to be who he wants to be. He wants more responsibility. He wants to be able to float across the front line and get more on the ball, isn't it? Because Liverpool, he walked into a team who had a very settled way of playing, the way that we play. But it looks now like we're going to play different. So my first question is, how do we play with the fullbacks? So if we look last year, we didn't have flying, overlapping fullbacks. We had, when Trent played, inverted, and Robbo kind of stayed behind and almost became a third centre half. So how are we going to play with these two now? Because if you look at the stats last year, Kirkus, he's the only player in the league who did more than 100 overlaps and 100 underlaps. So we kind of know what his game is. And Frimpong is the same, isn't it? Last year we got used to Mo Salah being a really sort of wide attacker, spending an awful lot of time on a touchline, and he became like almost a playmaker from that position. Hence all his assists in that. So Frimpong is getting in the way a little, isn't it? Because of the way he plays. His natural instinct is to wanting to get up there and use his pace, because his pace is his strength, isn't it? And then you got the problem in midfield. I always think that the one thing that will make our midfield better overnight is McAllister being fit. You stick him back in that midfield, and the way he works things out will make us a better fit, isn't it? And Ekiteke, really, Trevor, couldn't have done any more than what he's done. I've been really impressed with him. There's a clear way of how he wants to play. I often hear this phrase when they talk about positional intelligence. Get more from the position that you play. And I've been really impressed with Ekiteke in the way that he maximizes his role with and without the ball. He runs away to give other people space. I think he's done really well. Florian Wirtz at the moment is the one who's finding it a little bit difficult to find that role, because he wants to do it all, because he's capable of doing it all, isn't it? But the midfield is going to be really, really interesting. How you set it up, because obviously Florian Wirtz and two others, and how that works out. You would think that would be Maka and Gravenberch, and I think you can sense that with Dominic pre-season. I think he knows that he might be under a bit of pressure.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I'm going to come straight back to that in a second. But wasn't it notable as well that, one of the players we were linked with back at the start of the window, Adam Wharton, was probably the outstanding player on the field in that second half.
Don't get me started on him, Trev.
Well, I know. You see, the reason I bring him up is I know that you would love to see him wearing Liverpool kit, and he's a class act, and he's the kind of guy who does that stuff that you were talking about in terms of McAllister. He can work things out, that little through ball for the goal. Wow. Just, it looks so effortless the way he just pinged it forward. It's funny, isn't it? It's the one area of the team that we're not going to be doing much change to, it seems, in this window. And it brings us back to the point you were making. Now, some people, Jan, would say that it's not really possible for us to configure a Liverpool midfield without Dom Szoboszlai. And the reason they will say that is that because nobody can replicate the work rate there in terms of the stuff that people don't really notice, the covering runs, closing them passing lanes, the energy levels.
What he did last year, Trevor, because Mo Salah had a different role. Whereas in Klopp's team, everybody worked, up and down. Arne Slot said, listen, I'm going to save you energy a bit, Mo. So you have a different role. And that was then Dom's role to do most defensive work, isn't it? Hence the reason you find it difficult to see a team without him, because who else can cover that ground at that speed? Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's exactly where I'm going with this. because when you do start to try to configure it, you can see how if Gravenberch is absolutely on his game, the Gravenberch and Mac sort of pivot in the middle might work really, really well. But I think, as we discovered and as we spoke about over the course of the show last year, Gravenberch started fantastically in that Premier League winning campaign. But there is an aspect of his performances towards the end of the season that people didn't want to talk about. It got a bit lazy, the assessments of Gravenberch. Like, he's a wonderful player, but he wasn't able to maintain that standard throughout because it's not really his game, Jan. You see, that's what people weren't really getting. He was adapting to that role. And I think people were quite lazy in assuming that now we have the perfect six. I didn't believe that for a second. I don't think you did either.
No, I didn't. I mean, I almost felt at some stages that will we be able to win the league with him as a six? But the good thing was he didn't really play as a six, did he? He was more in the team for other qualities that he brought. You know, that ability to play through the middle, to change play, which, you know, Fabinho and people before him didn't have that ability, but he did, which was very important in terms of the way that we wanted to progress up the field. So again, we start with a slight worry in that position. If you have a Rodri or whoever they are, you kind of know what they're going to bring, isn't it? But you're relying on Gravenberch to really play well. Is he capable of finding that first 6 months from last season? I hope he is.
You and me both, man. We should actually take a look at what's to come. And the season to come is looking very interesting. It starts on a Friday night. Liverpool get the whole shooting match running. So we'll just have a quick look at the match schedule and share that with everybody so they can see it too. We start against Bournemouth in 3 days and 3 hours time, we're told here. And we follow that up then with the little run you were talking about. So we go from, what is that, the 15th. And the next game then is Monday the 25th, where we play at St. James's Park. An awful lot of people, including yourself, expecting that any Isak business will have to be done probably after that date. And then a quick turnaround to the 31st, where we play Arsenal at Anfield. And then we're right on into September action. On the 14th, we play Burnley at Turf Moor, and we play Everton at Anfield on the 20th. And see out the month then with Crystal Palace away. Now, on the whole, it's not a bad opening run of fixtures to the end of September. But like you said, there's a couple of real stinkers in there. But let's just focus, like we always do, on the Liverpool-Bournemouth game first, if we could. It's by no means a bad start to the season in terms of the fact that it's a home game, the fact that you would expect this team to beat Bournemouth. And let's just take a look, if we could, at the Bournemouth squad, just see what you make of that. Who do you think is going to make that up? We have something similar to what we shared there with the Liverpool one a few seconds ago. So they've got their choice of keepers there. We saw that they had this lad, that they got in the door recently, Senesi and Mepham and Smith. They've got Araujo as well in there, and in midfield, Lewis Cook still hanging around, David Brooks hanging around. They've been around there for ages. Alex Scott, Ryan Christie, Tavernier there as well, and Hamid Traore, and of course Philip Billing. And up top, Evan Nielsen, Utara, Sinistera, Kluivert. And they've got Semenyo as well, still knocking around, who was possibly thought that he might be off. And all under the leadership of young Iraola, who's proving himself to be a good manager. So it's fair to say that they will present a real challenge. And we saw, like you said, against Crystal Palace that, you know, everything is not quite as it should be in terms of our defensive structure and our cohesion and our transition play and all the rest of it. So it's going to provide a real test, this. And what did you make? What do you make of the challenge that Bournemouth will provide? How do you see that one going in general in terms of what they can offer?
Obviously, the one thing that makes me feel a little bit better about the game is the fact that they've sold all their defenders. The goalkeeper Kepa has gone back to Chelsea, joined Arsenal. I mean, what a summer they've had in terms of that. You know, their goalkeeper from last year is now at Arsenal. Their two centre halves, one is at PSG, the best team in Europe. The other one's at Real Madrid, and the left back is now at Liverpool. I mean, they've done some scouting job down there. You know, hats off to them. So that's the one thing that worries me. You look at the squad there and you think Senesi and Mepa might be the two who might have to play in those centre half positions, but he's not scared of moving people about. Lewis Cook, midfield player, played a lot of the season last year as a right back. But I think once you get past that lack of defenders, he got some really good players, some really good players. And obviously the players are suited to the way that they want to play. They're all quick, they're all energetic. You know, this is a high energy team that presses you high up on the pitch. They are much better equipped to play away from home than what they are at home. They'll be a dangerous opponent, that's for sure. I just think that they might just struggle a little bit defensively because it doesn't look like they got anyone through the doors as of yet, but they got some really, really good players. Having said all of that, there's also players who need to replicate the season that they had last year. And whether that's capable or not, I don't know. You mentioned Semenyo before. Can Semenyo has the same kind of season that he did last year? I don't know. I mean, last year was their best Premier League season ever, 56 points. What kind of season he going to have this year? I expect him to have a similar season. But I think we might just have too much for him on Friday.
In terms of the lineup for Liverpool, and we'll come back and get the prediction from you right at the end. There's a couple of other little things I want to talk about before we finish. But in terms of how Liverpool will line up, do you think he goes again with something very similar to that Community Shield team? I'm still wary whether, and I think he is too, whether Alexis McAllister can start. So it's likely, isn't it, to be possibly exactly the same team as started in the Community Shield. That probably would have been the point of that lineup going out in the Community Shield. So there's positives and negatives to take from that. We did look quite good at times, but there's obviously things that need tightening up. You'll have to really have to work on stuff, you'd imagine, in training in terms of not leaving ourselves vulnerable in the way that we did at the weekend. Would you think that's a fair bet that it'll likely be the same 11?
It's not unthinkable. I mean, there's no doubt. Half an hour before the Community Shield, he's gone, this is it, boys. You know, I picked what I want to go with in the first two games because that was the idea when the same team should go in against Bournemouth. And then a couple of hours later, he would have sat there with his glass of red wine and gone, I've seen things today I didn't particularly like. You know, how we solved the Gravenberch not being there. And the longer the game went, how we struggled with our organisation. So will that? No, it won't. So what I was going to say is that, does that make me think he'll change? No. It makes me think he'll work on it all week. And I think he's that type of a coach that, okay, that didn't quite work. Instead of changing personnel, we work on it for another 4 days and we get it right. And I think that's what he'll do. So yeah, I fully expect it to be the same team.
Do you find it surprising in any way, shape or form at all that the new boy Kirkes has come in and that Andy Robbo is immediately bumped to the bench? Because there's not been much talk about that. Some people would have presumed it, but I'll be honest with you, I thought at the start of the summer when we signed Kirkes, I thought, okay, he'll be there. He'll have, 45 minutes in the first couple of games. Well, not maybe 45, but maybe like 20, 25 minutes in a few games, and we'll get to see how he goes. But I fully expected the more senior man to start the season, purely because I thought there's a lot of change happening in this team and he might want to keep that kind of consistency or whatever in terms of the personnel. But it looks very much, doesn't it, as if he's been immediately bumped to reserve status. And with our Greek lad being linked with a move away as well, it looks like it's going to be that way until it's not, at least for Andy Robbo. Any shock there for you at all in that one?
Yeah, a little bit, because we were led to believe that it would be a fair fight. If Robbo decided to stay, it would be a fair fight. I'm not suggesting it's not fair, but it doesn't look that way, does it? And I totally agree with you. I remember when I took Kidderminster into the Football League and I signed a few players in the summer, but I still went with the team first game of the season that won the league last week, because it was kind of, yeah, but they deserve to walk the plank, let's find out. And I just thought with everything that Robbo has done, I thought he thought, well, let's go with Robbo and just take it from there. It's like that dignified sort of an end to a great player's career, isn't it? I'm not suggesting his career at Anfield, maybe, isn't it? You know, so I think maybe Robbo will be a little bit disappointed that already now it's pretty clear that we might have thought we got two fullbacks that we can use. It looks like we got one, and Robbo will only play in some of the lesser games or in case the boy's injured.
We were all very kind of cocky and confident when Frimpong came in, because we were all thinking, well, we've got Joe and he can cover in any position across the back four really well. We have Joe until we don't have Joe, and we currently don't. But our other right back is currently injured, and it has been, like I said earlier on, I think 48 games injured, 52 games that he was available for. That's not a great ratio in any way, shape or form for Liverpool. It doesn't fill you with great enthusiasm about his availability going forward. And it is the big attribute of any footballer's availability, I think. So what do you think about that right back situation? Would you be confident enough that Frimpong will be okay there? Because as some people said, and we heard discussions about it on Raw immediately afterwards and on several of the shows, what was really notable was that Frimpong was sprinting back towards his own defence in a way that we were not familiar with in recent years. So that certainly stood to him, and his acceleration going forward is something to behold.
I think it will be impossible that sometime during the season there will be people mention his inability to defend because there will be incidents where he's caught up the field, he can't get back, or there'll be crosses to the far post where just due to his sheer size, he may not be able to defend it. But he is an exciting player. And obviously bringing him in, we have a clear way of how we want to use him. You know, he's not a stereotypical right back. So we have a clear way of how do we want to use him. You know, he'll obviously have to take a lot of the workload off Mo, even going forward, going beyond Mo. So that's the interesting bit, isn't it? So yeah, he looks, I mean, he's one of those instant players, isn't he? You know, I mean, on Friday night at Anfield, people have never seen him before. Within 2 seconds, will know who he is because just with the sheer pace that he moves around the football pitch, isn't it? So yeah, very exciting. He is a very, very exciting player.
Seems to be a good lad too, by all evidence I'm seeing on the video clips. We should start wrapping up there because I don't want to keep you long on the first one. However, we need to flag up that we could do it getting your opinion on our rivals, and that'll be a whole section in and of itself. So next show kind of looks after itself. We'll be commenting on the Bournemouth game, looking forward to the game that follows, and also do a little bit on the teams that Jan sees as being rivals for the title in the season to come after an opening weekend of play. So we'll look forward to that. Should be a full and packed show. But before we leave, it's our usual routine here that we get a prediction from you for how you think the first game of the season, or the game that's about to come up in this case, is going to go. So Liverpool, Bournemouth, Friday night under the lights. What do you think?
Football is remarkable, Trevor. You know, we now start the Premier League game, and even after one game, you'll have a feel. You'll have a totally different feel. The feel that pre-season games can't give you. But the first Premier League game will give you a feel. So by the time we speak next week, you'll have a much better idea. But as I said before, I just think with us being at home, it'll be emotional at Anfield. There'll be a lot of new players who want to show what they've got. I think there's going to be a number of Liverpool games this year. We're going to predict that Liverpool to win and both teams to score, because I do think that we're vulnerable at the back. So I'm going to go down that road. Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 1.
All right, we will take it. We will take it as we always do. And I want to say thanks to Jan for joining me before the season started. He was immediate in his response, which I really appreciate, and I know you guys do as well. Thanks to all of you who joined us in the chats. And for those of you who are listening later on the audio formats, hopefully you've enjoyed having Jan back in your ears. Those of you who are joining us on the video in your thousands, fair play to you. We will be interacting as much as we can as the season goes on, but you can imagine we have a lot to get through in the first one. So thanks to Jan for that. My friend, it's been, as ever, a pleasure. So thanks for today and for the various insights.
We're all set ready. We're all ready, Trevor. Let's go. Time to go.
Time to go. You heard the man. We'll talk to you soon. Good luck.